Our nation's police have been a topic of discussion for years. We believe there is room for improvement in how our nation's police are trained and maintained. We are suggesting we shift some of the focus in the academy to create a more prepared law enforcement officer. We will discuss firearm proficiency, physical fitness qualifications, de-escalation training, as well as annual requalifications. After discussing how we will better train our officers, we will talk about maintaining their training throughout their policing careers. This will include discussing an officer's mental state and how to assess it and keep it in check. We will offer ways to keep our nation's officers mentally prepared for the job and increase their learning. Finally, we will discuss what to do with officers who are not fit for duty or make bad decisions. We will discuss ways to help them and keep our police departments healthy and efficient through using internal affairs. To understand how we need to train an officer, we must first understand how they are selected for the academy in the first place. When applying for a police department, a person must submit their initial application or resume. After considering their resume, the specific department will issue a written exam that the applicant must pass. This test includes comprehension skills like reading and writing. After passing this exam, the applicant must complete a questionnaire which includes a very thorough list of questions about the applicant and their background. Once accepted, the applicant will appear for a physical fitness test. This test typically has 4 parts. Push-ups and sit-ups are first. These are scored based on how many perfect reps can be performed within a specified time limit. Next, applicants will be tested on running ability and agility. A minimum total score will decide if the applicant passes or fails the test. Once the physical test is completed and passed, the applicant will set up an interview with a pre-employment detective to discuss the questionnaire they previously filled out, and they will also be interviewed by the department's board. The final interview will be conducted by a polygraph examiner. The applicant will be connected to a polygraph and ask questions about themselves and their background. The professional will report the answers along with the applicant's levels of transparency and honesty. Finally, the applicant will be checked by a medical professional who will decide if they are mentally and physically fit to work in the field as a police officer. As you can see, the selection process to become a police officer is quite long and thorough. Once an applicant is hired, they are not done being tested. They will now have to pass a 21 to 24-week program called the Police Academy. The Police Academy trains a rookie to work in the field. They will learn how to stay safe on the job while maintaining good community relationships. They will also learn how to communicate with the citizens in their jurisdiction. They will learn about the laws of their jurisdiction and how to enforce them properly. New law enforcement officers will also learn how to deal with physical altercations and end them in a professional manner while staying safe. They will learn to use their duty weapon and what justifies its use in the first place. The academy is a very stressful time for new officers. However, it is an important part of becoming a good police officer. Yet this type of testing is never repeated once hired and completing the academy. That is one thing we are proposing to change. One way we plan on changing our police force training is by keeping them accountable year after year. We propose that across the country, annual testing be required for law enforcement officers. We believe that police officers should test proficiency with their firearms, level of physical fitness, and that they should complete a certain amount of training hours throughout the year. First, 50 states require annual firearm recertification. This recertification requires every officer to be able to hit an intended target, often only at 70% accuracy, as well as clear malfunctions with their duty weapon. Often, law enforcement officers pass this test with flying colors. However, this is not a realistic testing and training scenario. We are proposing that firearms instructors should be allowed to review case files of officer-involved shootings that have been closed. This can allow the instructor to use real-life examples and modify their training to fit things that may actually occur, or things that have at least happened before to officers in their jurisdiction. This can better prepare an officer for how a suspect may act during an encounter, as well as before any weapon is fired. Providing this knowledge to officers is important so they can be more prepared to defuse the situation or know that shots being fired may occur. Another important aspect that should be involved in firearms training and testing is extreme stress. Law enforcement officers need to be able to stay calm under stress, as well as stay focused on their target and surroundings with a clear mind. Currently, no stress of any sort is implemented into firearms training. In a real scenario, a shooting is a very stressful scene, and police officers should go through this stress training to be prepared for it to happen in real life. Case files can help a law enforcement officer understand what stress does to an officer's decision. and to understand what is right and wrong and how to choose their next step. To keep our nation's officers proficient, we are proposing that officers should train bi-weekly with their squad. We could see this as a paid half day of training to better prepare an officer for duty and annual testing. Next, we believe physical requirements should be placed in every department in the nation. Right now, the only physical testing in Wichita is through the academy. A few other departments, there is yearly testing. Physical fitness is a very important aspect in this field. Officers need to be physically fit to give them a better chance of survival and a better chance of protecting the citizens of their community, as well as their partners. We propose that every jurisdiction implement weekly physical training of all sorts with the squad. This can create a greater sense of community and trust within a squad, as well as keep them active and in shape. We of course will encourage training outside of this once-a-week session, where the officer can train to their liking. As an incentive to stay fit, we believe annual testing should be required. We believe this should involve running, push-ups and pull-ups, and anything else the department sees fit. We believe that these requirements should be the exact same for every officer, regardless of their age or their sex. We understand that some officers may not pass. In this case, we suggest providing assistance for those who fail the test, as well as a deadline for them to retry the test. Finally, we propose that de-escalation training should be a final requirement for our nation's officers. De-escalation training, according to Apex Officer, is training that teaches officers to slow down, create space, and use communication techniques to defuse a potentially dangerous situation. De-escalation training has shown to reduce use of force incidents, as well as reduce complaints from the public. In Dallas, Texas, there was an 18% drop in uses of force after 1 year of the de-escalation training. And there was an 83% drop in complaints of excessive force since 2010. 34 states do not require de-escalation training, and Kansas is one of them. With these statistics, it is impossible to ignore the positive results of this training. We are proposing that every state should make de-escalation training a requirement based on hours. For example, a department may require 10 hours of paid de-escalation training every year. This not only will prevent uses of force, but create a better relationship with the community. We can only require so much training and testing for every officer. Officers face stressful situations daily, and this can be very taxing to an officer's outlook and mindset. For this, we will discuss how to assess and correct an officer's mental state.
Mental state. Mental health testing done at least twice a year. There will be a required mental health testing that will decide if you are still fit to serve. If the officer fails the test the first time, they are going to mandatory counseling once a month until the next test. If the next test in 6 months is failed, the officer is taken off of the force. All officers will be required to attend at least 30 minutes of counseling every month so that they are staying on top of their mental health. The officer will discuss their hardest calls over the last month with the counselor and allow the counselor to decide if they need to continue more sessions. This will ensure that the officer is staying at the top of their game and are not allowing anything to cloud their judgment by. Mental state continued. Required testing. Personality tests should be completed by each officer every 3 months. This is to test the officers to make sure that they are still where they were when they started, or to see if their personalities have improved. By improved, I mean more of their attitudes towards themselves, their jobs, and those around them. Impulse control tests should be conducted often, and by often, I mean as much as 6 times a year. The officers should be tested on the way they react in different situations, and if an officer's impulses aren't too standard, then they are to continue impulse control classes and be tested 2 weeks later to see if they have improved. If they have not improved, they will be terminated. Classes to work on personal bias, or lack thereof, would be extremely important due to the mental health of an officer. If the officer is biased towards something, they can later blame themselves for something that may happen. Therefore, if the officers work on this aspect, they will be taking precautions towards their mental state. Seminars. Officers must attend at least 3 seminars a year. Each officer will be mandated to attend at least 3 seminars in a year. Each seminar the officer attends will be paid for, that way there isn't any complaints and they will be more attentive. They will have a choice on which seminars they would like to attend. Officers will also be paid to attend the seminars. Officers will need to attend seminars on how to deal with a horrible outcome of a call. The seminars will help the officers learn not to blame themselves, which is very important. They will also attend seminars over how to maintain professionalism during every situation, no matter how bad, and this will help them maintain calm and to maintain a clear head. This will help keep them from blaming themselves for something they would probably normally think they could have done differently. They would attend seminars over common mental health issues in officers, which will help each officer look for common triggers and know when they should ask for help. Another seminar they would attend would be over the things that the police department and the community think needs changed. This won't necessarily help with the mental health, however, it will help to prevent outcomes that officers do find can cause mental health issues down the line. Trainings require more than 40 hours a year of training. We propose that there will be a minimum and maximum hours of training each year. Each department can decide as to what they see fit. For example, a department may say there should be no less than 40 hours of training each year and should be no more than 100 hours each year. With more than 40 hours of training, there will be so many improvements within our law enforcement. The more training that there is, the less chances there are for things to take a turn for the worse. There would less likely be as many police-involved shootings. There would be less of a chance for our officers to be shot, and this would in turn reduce the chances of officers suffering from mental illness. Removing the officers who shouldn't be. This is a sticky one and is also one of the hardest things to do with our officers, because everyone wants to make sure that a good officer is treated as such, and they do not want to make mistakes by terminating an officer's employment if not needed. After having the officers do all of the required testing, as stated before, if failed, we will terminate the officer. Every report that every officer has made should be read by an officer that is objective and is willing to criticize the work. And if there is anything off in the report, question it. After questioning it and receiving answers, if there is still something that is wrong and cannot be fixed, terminate the officer. Random drug testing is a must. And by random, not just once a month, that is usually the first week of the month, but truly random. Drug test a different day of a different week each month. The officers should have random ride-alongs by an officer that can stay objective towards them, and make sure that the officers are doing everything by the book. If they are not, then work with them, and try a random ride-along again. And if the officer is still not doing things by the book, terminate them. Ask the officers random questions, see how they are doing, and make them give a detailed answer, so that it can really be determined if they are as well as they say they are. Ask random questions about how the job is going, what they like to do on the job, etc. And see if the officers are doing well, and if not, then have them go to counseling. Counseling doesn't help, terminate them. Always, always, always let the officer try to prove themselves and prove that they aren't bad police, and they didn't make a mistake or whatever it is that they have been put on the line for before they are let go. This is very important. Let us summarize the points we have discussed here. We understand that selecting applicants for Police Academy is a long and grueling process that is extremely thorough. However, the training of our law enforcement officers does not match the long selection process.
The Police Academy is often the last strict testing of our nation's police. We need to improve the firearms and physical training, as well as the standards in our police departments. We also need to train our officers how to calm a situation through hours of required de-escalation training.
Finally, we discussed how to assess the mental state of an employed officer. For the officers who are struggling on the job, We also discussed ways to assist them and, as a last resort, dismiss them from duty.
With all the information presented here, it is clear that there are many existing issues within our current system. However, there are solutions and possible implementations that can have a massive impact on our newly reformed criminal justice system.